Hello, everyone, and welcome to this workshop today about creating an academic poster using MS Word. So it's possible that you have created posters using PowerPoint or using Canva or stuff like that. But if you are looking to make a poster in MS Word, or more specifically to submit it as a Word document, then this workshop is going to be useful for you today. So my name is Kieran. I am from the English Support Department, and I'm here today to walk you through the different steps and walk you through the ideas that you're going to include in your academic poster, mostly through using MS Word. Okay, so the first thing we need to think about is the philosophy behind an academic poster. So consider the idea then, what actually is an academic poster? What should it include? What should it not include? What are the things that will make it the best for you and for your audience? Okay, so the things we need to think about are these. So an academic poster is a visual representation. Okay, so it is different to an essay or a report in the fact that you can use visuals. Okay, so you should try to optimize using your visuals. Okay, also, because it isn't an essay, because it isn't thousands of words, you need to make sure that it is a concise summary of your ideas. So you're not going to include all of your ideas, all of the bits of information. You just need to think about the most useful, the most relevant part, and include that in your poster. All right, so try to think of it as an abstract. If you don't know what an abstract is included in some essays, in some assignments, where it is basically a summary of what the assignment is about. So it includes all of the main points, things like that. So you're basically doing that, but it is going to be a visual or partly visual abstract. All right, so you should not be writing a lengthy piece of work here, okay? You're only including the text that is needed in order to fully convey the ideas that you're talking about. Okay, so do make sure that you are following the word limit of your academic poster, and you will find that in your assessment brief. If you're not sure about it, please discuss it with your lecturer. Okay, so that's the main idea behind it. Let's have a look at how you're going to do that then. So as we've touched on a little bit, you need to focus on your key message. So what is the actual idea that you're trying to communicate to your audience? So in this situation, it might be good to think about all of the ideas, all of the things you would like to include, and then divide them up into how essential those bits of information are. So if they are critically essential, like are 100% needed in your poster, put those in one section. If there is some information that you think is helpful, but not necessarily like super important, put that in a different section. And if there is some information that it would be nice to include it if there is space, but it's not, again, not super important, then put that in another section which you could call additional information. Okay, so when you are creating your poster, you include the essential stuff, you include the helpful stuff if you have a bit of space, and if you have a tiny little bit of space left over, that's where you could include some of the additional information. Okay, so another thing we need to think about is your audience focus. Okay, so if you are making posters, academic posters here at Elizabeth School of London, then your audience to some extent is going to be your lecturer or in some ways other students as well. Okay, so think about who your message is aimed at. What do they already know? Do you need to explain any terms? Okay. Do you have some presumptions about what they do already know and things that you will not need to explain? So that's a thing for you to think about. If you're creating posters for other situations, then you need to base your poster on who you expect your audience to be. Okay, so critical to the idea of having an academic poster is you need to convey your ideas visually. So try and think in pictures in order to help you, okay? Because you can't necessarily include those in an essay, but a poster is all about including visuals. Okay, so if we look at this screen, we see we've got 6 tiny pictures on the left, and we've got one big picture on the right. Okay, what do these images mean to you? There is barely any text here, okay? But these pictures all convey a message, and what is it? Well, it is about making a fruit salad. Okay, we only have what do we got? 12 words there. And all of those 12 words there explain how we make a fruit salad. Okay, so if we were to type up the different stages of making a fruit salad, it would be hundreds of words. But here, by using visuals, we've only used 12 words, we've only used 7 pictures, we've saved a lot of time and effort with that. So remember, you can use icons or symbols to simplify ideas. All right. So sometimes it helps to explain more by actually simplifying. Okay. And that is where visuals are useful. Okay. So again, we have 3 images here. These 3 images may seem basic, but they all convey a simple idea, which is there is a storm and it is very strong winds and it is possible to blow somebody away, to turn your umbrella inside out. Okay, so you can use a combination of visuals in order to communicate quite a complex idea. Okay, so one of the most important points in making a poster is making sure that you plan it correctly beforehand. Okay, so you need to plan a structure for the content. Okay, so make sure you break it down into sections. Now, these may be obvious, like introduction, body, and conclusion, or there may be something standard in your assessment brief. So make sure you do look at it again to see what should be included in it or what you need to include in it. Okay. All right. And make sure that you do follow all of the rules, okay, using the right structure. If there is a specific font or size of the text that is needed, then please follow those rules. And do think about then which images you are going to include. All right. When it comes later to writing the content, again, like we said, make sure you really do answer the question that comes up in the assignment brief. Make sure that you follow the word count guidelines and make sure that you include your references, as you should be doing with any academic piece of work here at Elizabeth School of London. Okay, so one of the key aesthetic problems that we have is making sure that we have a layout which works effectively. Okay? So many academic posters are based around the idea of using columns for the layout. And if you have blocks of text and pictures occupying one or more columns here. So as you can see here, this one has 3 columns and this one has 3 columns as well. Now, you don't have to do this, but it is a good starting point for you to imagine your poster having something like this. This is the traditional way of doing it. You can follow tradition. You don't have to. You can create something different. As long as it is visually attractive and easy to read, then you can choose whatever you want. Okay, but one thing to keep in mind is generally people, when reading in English, we have a natural reading order, which is left to right, top to bottom. So it helps to follow that reading order. Again, you can change it, that's fine. But if you are going to change it, make sure you use some visuals to show you where you should read next. Okay, so you could use arrows or numbers or something like that. Okay? You could even go like clockwise by following how a clock looks, etc. All right. Some posters are written in a way where it doesn't matter what order you read it in. So maybe that's something you could keep in mind as well. Okay, so another part of planning your layout is maybe getting it down on paper first and make some notes. Maybe create a couple of different ideas of how your poster could look. Maybe show them to your friends and family or your colleagues or something like that, and they can give you feedback on which one looks the best, basically. So there are lots of possibilities for layouts, and then use paper to sketch out your possible ideas. Okay. So there are three different options here on the screen. Some of them are more traditional than others. Okay, so the first one is quite traditional with a title at the top, then moving through from an introduction, a method, results, etc. Now, the middle one is quite interesting because it has the introduction in the center and then the information goes around it. Whereas the third one kind of has a comic book style to it with moving across and then down and then moving across, things like that. So again, none of them are better than the others. It's just whichever one you think is best. Or maybe you have a different idea as well and you do it like that. Okay, so the things to remember then. Again, have a look at your assignment brief about the things you will definitely need to include. So do you need a title? Almost certainly. Yeah. Will you have an introduction? Again, almost certainly you will need to include an introduction. But do you need to include a methodology or results or things like that? Again, consider your assignment brief. Do you need a conclusion? Again, almost certainly yes. And will you need to include references? So all of this information should be in your assignment brief, so consider it before you even start writing. Okay, so again, plan to have at least 2 or 3 columns, like all of these ones here have. That has 2, that has 3 in a sense, if we include the middle part, and this almost has 2 columns as well, in the fact that it has 2 halves to the screen. Now, another thing to think about is including white space. So, I mean, if we consider this poster here, we have some space here at the top. We have some spaces where there are no bits of text. So you need to think about, why should we include some white space? Well, the idea is, if we just see text filling every single millimeter of the screen, then it becomes too busy. You start thinking, like, oh God, there's so much to read here. It's just a wall of text. So an important part of your design is actually including some space where there is no text so that it makes it easier to read. Okay, so make sure you plan in having some white space. Okay then, so let's think about how we can actually use Word to design these kinds of posters. All right, so the first thing you need to think about is what orientation your poster is going to have. So is it going to have portrait, which is the natural style if you're writing an assignment, or is it going to have landscape, which is perpendicular to this? Okay, so the way that you can do this if you're using Microsoft Word is to go to Layout, then to Orientation, and then to Portrait or Landscape. Okay, so we are going to see how we can do that now on the screen. So let me open up my Word here. Okay, so as we discovered, we need to go to Layout, and then we go to Orientation, and then we choose the orientation we would like. Now again, there is no reason why you should choose one or the other. It is what your preference is. Again, check your assignment brief. Sorry, it might mention you may need to include one or the other one. Okay, but in general, just choose the one which you think best matches or would be best for your presentation. Sorry, for your academic poster. Okay. Now, the next thing we need to think about is opening up the margins. So when you are writing essays or reports, you will have some margins which will stop you putting text in the sides or at the top of the page. But when it comes to the poster, that's not necessarily a problem anymore. We are able to use more of that space. So I suggest then that you go to Layout, margins, and then choose narrow, this will give you a lot more space to work with. Okay, so let's go again back to Word. So we go to layout at the top, we go to margins, and then we go to narrow. So let me just type in a little bit of text here, and it will demonstrate how it will look when we change it to narrow margins. So that's what it looks like in the normal style. But if we change it to layout, margins, and then narrow margins, you see it pushes the text higher up because there is more space at the top. There is also more, we've now also filled in more of the space at the side. So that is what it looks like with normal, and that is what it looks like with narrow margins. Okay, you can see it gives us a lot more space to work with. Okay, so that will give you more space to include more things in your poster. Now, the next thing is when you're moving around text boxes and images, excuse me, then it will be best for you to use some guides like you can see here on the screen. So it is helpful to include these rulers at the side because it will tell you where on the screen your information is. Also, it is helpful to put these grid lines, these lines of dots on the screen, because that will help you to be more accurate in lining things up. So I'm going to show you how to do both of those things, the ruler and the grid lines. So we return to Word. Okay, all right, and now remember, we are going to View. Okay, then we go to the Show section. And first of all, we're putting in the rulers at the side. So you can now see here on the left, we've got the rulers, which tells us how many like centimeters or millimeters, etc. we are. And then we also have them at the top as well. Okay, so maybe I want my text to start at kind of well, maybe I want it to stop at 8 centimeters. Okay, so now we can see I'm lined up here with 8 centimeters, things like that. Okay, so that was going to View, Show, and then Ruler. And then if we want those dots on the screen as well, we put grid lines on. Okay, so let's go through that again. So we are at home, we go to View, we go to Show, we put the rulers on the left-hand side and at the top. And then if we put grid lines on, now let's put the little squares on the screen. So when later on we start talking about putting text box on the screen, this is going to help us. Okay, so I've got some text in the box. I want to put, so when I'm moving it around, it clicks to all of those squares on the screen. So if I put a text box there, and then I create another text box, and I want it to be on the same place on the left, then I just follow the position on the screen. I know I'm one box from the left, and now those text boxes are both lined up. Okay, so that's why it's useful to go to View, Show, and to put those on, both ruler and grid lines. Okay, so now we've returned to the presentation. Okay, so let's look at our next slide here, which is about adding and arranging text boxes. So like I just said, so you're going to be putting text boxes in. And what you're going to be doing is putting text boxes in, you're going to write things in the boxes, and then you're going to move them around, you're going to design them well in order to create a visually attractive poster. So the way that we do that is to go to Insert, Text Box, and one of the options we can use is Draw Text Box. So you actually watched me do that before when I was showing you the grid lines, but I will do it in a slower way now. Okay, so we go to Insert, we go to Text Box, and what we can do is we can go to Draw Text Box. Okay, and then you click and drag it to show how big you want it. Okay, so let's try that one again. So Insert, text box, draw text box. So I want this to fill the whole of the page. So I'm going to click from the left. I'm going to drag it all to the right and then make it that big. Okay, and then I type inside it. For that text, I can change, the color of the text, I can highlight the text, etc. But also for the box, I can do some things as well. So if we kind of double click on the box, it opens up this shape format, and this is where we can change the color of the outside. Like that. Okay. All right, I can also fill the box with color, so I can change it here by using shape fill. Yeah. Okay. You can also put some other effects on it. So if you want it to look like it's glowing, you can do things like that. So I suggest you just play around with it, see what you can do with it. Okay. All right. So that's quite useful, I think. Yeah. All right. But there is another way we can do it. Okay. So instead of creating a text box for ourselves, what we can do is go to Insert, Text Box, and then use one of these pre-made examples that Microsoft has done for us. So I want something on the side. Okay, so I clicked that one, and it creates this box already. So it's black and green, it's got white text. So let me show you that one again. So Insert, Text Box, and then I chose, which one? I chose this one. Okay, so this will put it here on the screen. Okay, and remember, you can move it around if you want. Okay. All right, so sometimes it can save you time to just use those boxes that already exist there. Okay. Right, so if we come back to my little PowerPoint here, the next thing we're going to talk about is aligning text boxes. So we do this by going to Shape Format and by using Align. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Maybe you don't understand what that is at the moment, but it will become clear when we've got some boxes on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to draw my text box here. Okay, all right. So I got my text box here, but I want to save a little bit of time I want it to be put here on the left of the screen. So instead of like me pulling it over and trying to drag it and drop it over there, I can just go to Align, and then I can choose Align Left. I'll put it on the left. Or if I go to Align, I can put it in the center. I can put it on the right, at the top, in the middle of the page, at the bottom of the page, etc. Okay. So at the moment, I want it in the center and I want it in the middle of the page. So remember, you have the box, or you can double click on it, or you can click once and go to Shape Format, for example. You go to Align and you can choose if you want it left, center, right, etc. Okay, so that will help you to save time in the long run. Okay, you can select multiple boxes all at the same time and align them all to the left or the right or the center. Okay, so for some other things here, we're going to have a look at inserting some different things. Okay, so this is where we're going to go to the Insert menu and think about all of these different things we could include. Okay, so think about this then. This is where you're going to think about the visuals that you would like to include. All right, so are you going to be including some tables or some photos or things like that? If you are, remember that you will need to reference if it is somebody else's work later on. Okay, but if you're just creating things on your own, or if you're creating, if you're using Microsoft's pre-made materials, then you won't need to reference them. Okay, so let's come to our Word document, and we are going to be inserting a few different things if we can. Okay, so first of all, we're going to go to Insert, and we're going to consider inserting a table. All right, it's going to be best if I turn the grid lines off for this one. So if we go to Insert and then Table, and then what we can do is if we want a table that is 6 columns with 2 rows, then we do that. We drag it to 6 right and then 2 down. All right. Or maybe we want it a table which is 4 by 4. So we go 4 across and 4 down, and it creates a table which is 4 across and 4 down. Okay. So you can do it like that, and then you can add in your text later on. You can change how it looks using the menus that you've got here at the top of the screen. Okay. That's one thing you can do with inserting a table. Another thing is if you go to Insert, Table, and then Insert Table, it then gives you a couple more options. So again, the number of columns and the rows, but then also some extra options that you can use here. So maybe follow or maybe play around with those ideas as well. Okay, so maybe I want 7 by 3. Okay, so there I have my 7 by 3 table. Okay. All right. You can also just draw a table as well. So if you go to Insert, Table, and Draw Table, then you can draw it on the screen. Oh, messed that one up a little bit. Okay, but you can draw the columns, you can draw the rows, etc. Okay, so if you find that easier to do, then I suggest you use that one instead. Okay. There are also some quick tables as well, which Microsoft suggests. So if you're going to be including a calendar, they're possible there. If you're including a double table, things like that, you can just click on them by Insert, Table, Quick Tables, and then just choosing one of the ones you would like to have. Okay, so they are just formatted already, and then you just type in the text that you would like to have. Okay, so that is about inserting tables. Okay. So other things you can insert are pictures, which you might be thinking about including. So you go to Insert, go to Pictures, and then probably well, depends where your pictures have been saved, but for me, it's going to be in this device. It's going to be in Downloads. It's going to be here, and then it adds it to the screen. Okay. All right. So remember, you go to Insert, Pictures, and then wherever your picture is saved, click on that and it will add it to the screen. So once it is here on the screen, all right, there are a few different things you can do with it. Okay, so what I would like to do is maybe remove some of the information that's not needed. Maybe I don't want this bottom part here, this physiological needs. So what I'm going to do is I click on the picture. Okay, now there are multiple ways I can do this. I can right click and go to crop. All right, did you see that one? So I clicked on the picture, right clicked, I chose crop. Now this allows us to remove information. Excuse me. To remove information that is not needed from the image. So I didn't want that bottom part, physiological needs. So I click and pull from the bottom. I decide where I want the last part to be, and then leave it there. Then if you click off, it will disappear. Okay. Maybe I want the other kind of bits of the part removed as well. So I drag those ones and then click off, and there we go. Okay. So I've inserted an image in. I've made it the size that I want. I've removed the information I don't need. Okay. And yeah, now it is in my poster. Okay. So remember, I have included this. This is someone else's image, so I will need to reference it. Okay. All right, so we'll remove that one for now. So let's have a look at what else we have. So the next thing we can do is insert some shapes. Okay, so inserting shapes, this can be helpful when you're designing, planning your page. So if you have some text boxes, now let's put some text boxes back here. Okay. And I want to show the order of my text boxes of how I go from one to the other. Maybe I want to put some arrows in between them. So I go to Insert, Shapes, and then I try to find one of the arrows here. So I click on the arrow, and then I draw it onto the screen. Okay, so maybe I want to move this text box a little bit down, and now I have an arrow there, which puts me between the first between the first text box and the second text box. Okay, so you can add arrows in, you can add many other different shapes in, smiley faces, hearts. I suggest if you're doing an academic poster, you probably won't be including those, but circles and things like that. So if I do put a circle in, okay, remember we can still put a text box here by adding a text box in it and typing text. All right, but what you've noticed here is that the text box has this kind of white box around it, but I want that text maybe to be red, and I want it to just appear on the circle. Okay. So what I do at this point is I click on the text box, it takes us to shape format, and then if I want it to be transparent, so it is just the text on the circle, what I do is click on Shape Fill, then I click on No Fill, and it makes the box transparent. If I want to hide the black line around it, again, I click on it. On the shape outline, I go to No Outline. So the text just appears on the circle there. Okay. All right, so that is how we put shapes. Now, the last thing we can have a look at is putting in some icons. Okay, so icons are these pre-made, almost like emojis, but not really emojis. They are just little images that we can include in. Okay, so maybe maybe we're talking about money, and we want to include some of these images here. So we're talking about pounds. We're in Britain, yeah. So we're going to include a pound sign. And here it appears on the screen. So one more time, Insert, Icons. You can search for anything that you would like. So if we want to look at, I don't know, industry, okay, we can choose the picture, click on it, click Insert, and it adds it in. Yeah, so again, we can change the colors by going to Graphic Fill, etc. Okay, so all of those things will help us to create visually attractive posters. All right, so things to remember then when you are including visuals. If you are including photos, make sure that they are high resolution pictures because they may look fuzzy or pixelated if you increase the size of them, etc. So make sure they are the highest resolution possible before including them. We've talked about cropping and resizing, so make sure that you do that to remove any unnecessary information from your images. Okay. For every image you do include, make sure you include a caption about what that image actually shows. Okay. So if you are going to if you are going to include a table, make sure you say what that table is describing or showing. All right. And then those last things that we looked at, the icons, make sure you include some of those. They will help to improve the visual appeal of the poster. Okay, so other things to think about there. All right, make sure that when you are planning your poster or even when you're designing it, that you remember to include some colors which are complementary and which are easy to read. Okay, because there are some color combinations that don't really work when you put them together. So if you have a look at this RGB color wheel that you've got here, the best color combinations are colors from opposite sides of the wheel. So you hear red and blue often work well together. So you could include those ones, yeah? All right. But mess around with the colors a little bit, see what works well. If it looks a bit difficult to read, then do not include it. Okay, so it's all about readability. Carrying on the idea of readability is make sure that you use fonts which are easy to read. So generally there are 4 different types of fonts. We've got the serif ones at the top. Okay. So serif fonts are the ones that include those little tails here on the T, etc. Okay. Now these are traditional and they're formal, and the reason that they're traditional and formal is because they are easy to read. They feel like they are the right ones we should be using in academic text. So you could easily include these, the most common ones, Times New Roman, etc. But there are some other ones we can use, but we should be careful when we are using them because they become a little bit more difficult to read. So here, for the next one, we can use some sans serif fonts like Railway, like we've got here. Now these feel more modern, they don't feel as traditional as the old ones. They don't have those little tails at the end of the letters. Okay, so some people find that easier to read, some people find it more difficult to read. Okay, but you could include some like that. Now these other ones, these script ones, these are ones that look like handwriting. Okay, they may look more beautiful or more creative, but they can actually be more difficult to read. So make sure that you check when you are creating your poster that you can still read them. Now the last one, you can also use these more decorative ones like you have here, bungee. Now these are fun and they are informal, but if your whole poster is made from them, it makes it very difficult to read. Okay, so they can be good for introductions or the titles or something like that, but not for the whole text. Okay, other things to think about here. When you are adding your text, make sure that you're formatting it correctly. All right. So we've got 2 different text boxes here, but they both have the same amount of text. They both have the same actual text in it. So the one on the left is normal line spacing and normal paragraph spacing. But this one on the right has a smaller font, has increased line spacing, and has a space between the paragraphs. Okay, which one do you think looks best and looks easier to read? Well, you're probably going to say the one on the right. And that's because almost everybody thinks the one on the right is the better one. So what actually happens is here, first of all, we've put a line between the first paragraph and the second. So that splits it up. It makes it a little bit easier to read. Okay. Now, another thing we've done is we've created a bigger space between the lines here. Again, this makes it easier to read. Okay. It also makes sure that we use more of the box. Okay. All right. So we've made it slightly smaller, but we've increased the space between it and we've added a space between the paragraphs. So let's have a look at how we could do that so that we fill our boxes and make it a lot easier to read. Okay. So let's have a look. Let's put some more text here on the page. And what we're going to end up doing is increasing the line spacing in order for it to look better and to fill the space. Okay, so what you've got here, okay, you first select your text, and if you want to increase the line spacing, you come here to paragraph, you come to this one here, and then you choose. Okay, so we're going to go to 3 line spacing, so that looks like that. Okay, that's what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like now. Okay, this will allow you to fill your boxes out more, make them look more full of text, but also easier to read. All right, so that's how you do it. So if you remember, you select your text. You are still in the home section. You go into paragraph, and then you choose this one with the up and down arrows, and then you change the line spacing. Okay. All right, so just other ways that you can do this. Okay, you had the one on the left, but the one on the right is better. So increase the line spacing, decrease the font size a little bit, make sure you have spaces between the paragraphs, and it all just looks a lot easier to read. So if you combine all of those elements, you should come up with a nice final poster. So something like this, all right? So these have been made for academic purposes, like you can see, the Open University Business School, another one here, all right, and they are visually attractive. They have images, they have text boxes, but they are numbered here. Here on the one on the left, we've got some pie charts, lots of different colors. All looks very visually attractive. Okay, similar with these ones here on this screen as well. So you think you've finished. So what you should do next is you need to proofread it and make sure you're checking for any grammar mistakes, for any spelling mistakes. Word can help you with this. It's not perfect, but if you do need a bit more help with it, come to your English support tutors and they will be able to help you out with that. Okay. Before you submit, also share your poster with your colleagues, share it with your family. Do they have any suggestions for making it clearer and more accurate? Another thing, make sure that your visuals are actually easy to read. Okay, if they're not, if you need to scroll in and zoom in to read it, then it's probably not that easy to read, and it won't be easy for your lecturer to read it either. So just check if they are readable before you submit. And as always, we all have these problems where you think you're ready to submit, but it's not the copy that you thought it was. Where is it? How can I find it again? Make sure you save multiple versions of your poster as you go along. Okay, version 1, version 2, version 3, so at least you don't have to create the whole poster again if there is some problem. Okay. So just before you do submit then, make sure you follow this checklist. Have you double-checked everything that was in the assessment brief? Okay. Have you answered the question? Have you included all of the parts that you need to include? Okay. Have you also chosen and set the correct page size and orientation? If it's going to be A4, A3, or portrait, or landscape, etc. Your assignment brief may mention this. Is your poster actually clear and easy to follow? Okay, if so, then you're doing well. Okay, have you lined up all of your text boxes neatly, and do they all follow lines in left and right and center, etc.? Okay. Have you used a consistent font and sizes and colors, nothing too difficult to read? Are your images high quality? So we mentioned that before. And most importantly, have you referenced where you got your images from? Okay. So checking your spelling, grammar, formatting, etc. Have you included some white space, as in you've not made it too full of words? Okay. All right. Now, the last thing, well, one of the last things is to think about, are you able to explain your poster easily and quickly, just a couple of minutes? If you're not able to do that, then that means that your poster is probably too complicated. Okay, if it's too complicated, then yeah, it's not going to go very well. All right, so lastly, when you're submitting, have you saved your poster as a Word document for submission? Okay, so if you are required to submit it as a Word document, you have to save it as a Word document and then upload it as one. All right, so things to think about. Keep it simple and clear. Make sure that it is visual and the audience thinks that as well. Make sure you prioritize your key information. And if it is easy to explain, then that means it is an effective poster. Okay. If you really want to become an expert at using Word for poster creation, Microsoft does have some Word templates that you can use already. So they have some poster templates that you can download and use. So I suggest you have a look at those. That it might make it more visually attractive. You just download the template, you add in your text to it, and then you can edit it how you please. All right, now some people ask about, can I create a poster in PowerPoint or in Canva and then just save it as a Word document? Well, it gets quite difficult. It is possible, but there are some technological issues that you may need to think about. It is possible to just save your slide from PowerPoint as an image and paste it to Word, but the problem is that it doesn't include the words in the image in the word count. So if you've put 500 words into your poster and you've created it on PowerPoint, you've saved it as an image, you've copied that image to Word, then those 500 words will not be included in your word count. Okay, so that's one problem. If you do that though, okay, you should then fill out the appendix with the words that you haven't included. Okay, all right. So that is one way you can do it, but it's probably just better to create it from scratch in Word. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending this message here about creating academic posters in Word. All right, so if you are with ESL and you'd like some extra help with anything academic English related, then please contact either myself, Kieran, who's on the right there, or my colleague, Christine, who's on the left, and you can contact us by emailing englishsupport_manchesterwh@esl.ac.uk. So thank you everybody for joining me today, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.